parents, what spooky past life memory did your kid utter? Was watching an old video of a jazz drummer playing a solo. No idea who it was, but he was really good. My daughter, probably age 3, was looking over my shoulder for a minute before she said I used to play the drums like that when I was a man. Edit, when I got up this morning this had blown up. Thanks for the awards and hilarious comments. My daughter is the one who deserves an award, so I will pass it on. Unfortunately she no longer has any recollection of making that statement or playing drums. But she's a very musical person and I'm hoping she stays that way. My little brother said when he was 3 or 4, when I was a grown-up, I went to war, and I never came back. Preschool in Florida can be like that sometimes. Answer for my parents. When I was 4 my parents and I went to my aunt's farm. The wind started picking up and I looked back at my parents and said got to tie the hay bale down in the wind. That's how David died. To this day no one knows who David is. My daughter asked me, remember my fancy hat, and when I said no, she said, yeah, before I was dead, I used to work in a bank. I saved my money and bought a hat in a round box. I was on the bus and a man almost sat on it. Then the bus crashed and I died. She was about 3 and totally casual about it. Editing for clarity, my daughter definitely knew about hat boxes. She was very into musicals, one of which was Easter Parade, a movie where fancy hats were a very big deal. She went through a phase of being really interested in death after my mom died, so I think that's where the bus crash came from. At the time, we were talking a lot about death and dying and the idea that accidents can kill a person and how scary that is. I personally think kids say weird stuff because they aren't yet fully wired. Mentally I reportedly used to talk to a teddy bear that lived in a cabinet at about the same age, and would sit there happily chatting at an open door for ages. My middle son used to talk about having a different mum before me. He would say she was blonde and looked nice but wasn't nice. He would bring it up randomly and only ever got a bit emotional when he would tell me that when he was with her he never got to grow up. He said he chose me to be his mom this time because I would let him grow up and get old. When he would say the last part it was as if he was looking for reassurance. He'd ask me like, right, Mom? I can grow up this time? Really fucked me up sometimes. My nephew, around 2 or 3, would talk about his other mom and then look confused when you asked him to elaborate. She's not here now. Might have been daddy's girlfriend. Either that or fucking Coraline. My 5-year-old daughter said to me I was in your belly twice, Mama. The first time I died before I came out, but I came back. I did lose my first pregnancy 8 months before getting pregnant again. She was never told. I don't know what it was, but that's what happened. Edit, thanks everyone. In typical Reddit fashion, I didn't expect this one to blow up quite so much. Lol. But my daughter is pretty awesome and has a crazy amazing memory. She recalls events from when she was 2. So, she very likely heard my husband and I discussing it. Any other explanation sort of, well, creeps me out. Ha. And pregnancy after miscarriage is a weird bundle of emotions. I understand how this can help people when they are feeling a loss, but that was not my intention with the post or anything. If it helps, I'm very happy to have shared this weird little memory. Be well everyone. My son said once, Mommy, when I was big and you were little, I remember when we danced in the kitchen. The only person I ever danced in a kitchen with as a child was my grandfather. I used to watch my nephew when he was about 3 or 4. One day he was at my house and pointed to a magnet of Arizona. It had a picture of the desert with rock formations. Kid pointed at it and asked where it was. He said he used to live by red rocks like that with his first family who all had straight, dark hair, his is blonde and curly. Now, and that he had a mom and a dad and he had had a brother until he went too far into the desert, too close to dark, and got eaten by not dogs, not wolves but smaller. I said coyotes? And he kind of mouthed the word and said, oh, that's what you call them. Then he was sad and didn't want to talk about it anymore, so we had lunch and that was the first and last time he mentioned it. When my son was 4 we had driven past a cemetery. He asked me if I remembered when he died and was buried. I said no and asked him what he meant by saying that. He said he had died, was buried in a cemetery, and that's when he started growing in my belly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up when he said this. He doesn't remember say this. When my nephew was about 3 or 4, my sister said he was throwing a tantrum in the car while he was in his car seat and he yelled at her randomly, "I waited 100 years to be born. You trying to tell me there's a 100-year waiting list to be reincarnated?" I don't have kids, but when my brother was a toddler he said something to my mom about throwing hay in the window for the horses. My grandfather died before his birth and was a farmer. The barn had windows and he would just throw the hay in the windows for the horses to eat. My mom was really freaked out, but he never said anything else similar again. Didn't believe in ghosts and shit until this day, but it's fair to say that now I have a slightly more open mind. Our 2/3-year-old daughter was playing on her own, but like she was playing hide and seek with an imaginary friend. Asked, "Are you playing hide and seek?" She said yes. "Who are you playing with?" "Uncle Andrew." My wife's brother Andrew was 7 when he drowned when my wife was 5. Didn't like to talk about it, so we never mentioned it. When I was 3 I used to tell my mom stories about my other family every night before bed. The siblings I had and the dog too. One day she took me to Target and I told her I wanted big girl undies and she said she would buy them for me and I could wear them when I was potty trained. I told her that my other family already potty trained me, so I can start wearing them now. I put them on that day and never had an accident after that. She never potty trained me and was just shocked. I had a brother pass away from brain cancer. At the time we had a cat who was a calico and just sort of knew he was battling something. She was really mean to most people, but with him she was gentle. He would grab her paws and she would just let it happen. Well, about 3 years after he passed, my parents had another child. Another boy. He was about 3 when he told my parents about the white, brown and black cat that used to let him grab her paws. She had died about a year before he was born. My little brother was born just after 9/11. When he was a toddler one time, he went on about how he used to work in a tall building and wore a suit and tie. Freaked my parent out. Apparently when I was really little, around 3 or so, I told my mom that this was my last time here, that I wasn't going to come back. According to my dad, when I was around 5 I was staring out of the window during a heavy thunderstorm. When he asked me what I was doing I answered, "When do the bombs drop? Are they gone yet?" I grew up in Germany, and my dad's dad used to alert the city for incoming air raids. My grandpa died 3 days before I was born, and at 5 I had no idea about the war, or my grandpa. Really freaked him out at the time. A couple moments later I forgot what I said when he asked me more questions. Apparently when I was a kid, my dad and I were watching Survivor Man. Apparently it was an episode where he was in the woods, and I said something along the lines of "I got lost in the woods once with friends, but I was never found." My co-worker has a son who, when he was about 3, told her he used to grow rice and lived in a place where 2 rivers met. He was able to name the rivers, and she located it on a map of East Asia. Pretty wild. When he was around 4, my grandson used to talk about his job at the ice factory. One day he was talking about his boss Favo and the day he quit. I asked him why he quit and he turned to me and quite passionately said, "I'll tell you why I quit. They made me work 15 days in a row without a break and I had enough of that." It was weird hearing all that righteous anger coming out of that little boy. My daughter just informed me that he was 3 when he always talked about working at the ice factory. So yeah, scary 3-year-olds. My middle son, 5, is named after my wife's grandfather. He just looked at her a couple of weeks ago and said, "I remember when you were little and you sat on my lap." He also once gazed into my mother-in-law's eyes, at 3 to 4 years old, stroked her cheek and said, "My daughter." None of mine have, but back pre-pandemic I was watching my friend's then 3-year-old for her and he saw a big military ship and he got this kind of far away look and said, "I remember when my boat sank. There were so many sharks." I said, "What?" He blinked, said, "What?" and then started asking questions about the boat. I mentioned it to my friend and she said, "Yeah, He does that sometimes. My little brother, when he was little, like 3 or 4, said that he was in the jungle saving animals, and one day he had to decide if he would stay with the animals or come live with us. He chose us, but reminded my mom that he couldn't stay forever. Just for a little while. He passed this last January at 26 years old. Edit. I appreciate the love. Everyone make sure to say what you need to those who need to hear it. I don't believe it's my place to tell the whole story, and I don't believe this is the forum. So I'll leave this as is. I also want to advocate for professional mental health for those who have experienced the loss of a child, sibling, parent, etc. Don't figure it all out alone. Go get help.